you are in all of these areas that you're finding difficulty. You are the common denominator.
Mhm.
So that means that you can impact change in all those areas.
That was my guest this week, Kaii Marie, founder and owner of Kaii Marie LLC, through which she offers workshops, retreats, and educational trainings. Hello, I'm your host, Martin John, and you're listening to the Recover Yourself podcast, where we address topics you'll face while on a journey to recovering yourself. This and all of my work is produced to support caregivers of all kinds, even those of us who just happen to find ourselves in the caregiver roles. I'm also interested in expanding how we understand both addiction and recovery. This is important to me because caregivers, especially those in the field of substance abuse, are so often overlooked. And when our caregivers have problems, well, we all have problems. Today, Kaii and I are addressing the ever-elusive shifting sands of learning. When we are children, we are excellent learners. As newborns, we learn more in less time than we ever will again in our lives. However, that learning happens with no frame of reference on how to sort the information, so we sorted it with these big, broad strokes. And those broad strokes sit below the surface of our lives for the rest of our lives. That is, unless we take it upon ourselves to reorganize those broad strokes so we can make more sense of them, now that we have the benefit of a decent frame of reference. Most people don't even know this needs to happen, which is extremely unfortunate. But for those of us on a true path to recovery, well, relearning is just part and parcel to the work that we do. So this is nothing new, and it is why those of us in recovery are considered the lucky ones. Kaii Marie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on your platform.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking all about teaching ourselves how to understand the world after we have already solidified how we understand the world, right? As children, we are exposed to things that we have never experienced before. We experience the world for the first time, and we believe as children that is the way the world works. Now, can you explain to me how we can, as adults, look back at the beliefs that we and the lessons that we learned as children, so that we can start breaking it apart and seeing what's useful and what's not?
So when we look at our experiences in childhood, not only does it show up as our behaviors, but also directly tied to our health. So that could be, we could see higher rates of diabetes, high blood pressure. So in order for us to begin to change those patterns that we have as adults, whether it be physical, emotional, we have to begin to look at our childhood and say, okay, what was my experience like? Not what someone told you it was like, but what did you actually experience when you were growing up? And so when we begin to do that, we can begin to see, oh, okay, for example, in my childhood, if I was always seeking the validation of mom and dad, right? That could develop into me as an adult. Maybe all my friendships kind of have that same type of pattern. Maybe in the workplace, I'm always seeking the validation of my boss. I could go above and beyond at work. I could become addicted to working because I want to make sure my boss knows how hard I'm working. So all that we see showing up in our lives, there is that connection. And as we begin to realize that, which sometimes it does take time, but thankful for platforms like yours, which kind of cuts all that time that it would take for you to realize the root cause of these patterns that we have as an adult. It shortens that so that we can say, okay, so I'm noticing that these certain outcomes continue to happen in my life. How do I begin to change that? So where did I learn that behavior from? And of course, this is not in a judgmental fashion. This is in a fashion of, I just want to know why. Just start asking the question why, because then we can begin to make changes.
Yeah, I always talk about this idea of we approach, if we can approach it with curiosity rather than if we can be curious, not furious, we can really cut through a lot of that early learning, because we all learn as children, and as children we have to learn everything, right? As a baby, we have to learn space, and we have to learn speed, and we have to learn all of these physical things, and then we have to learn these emotional things, and all of that sort of stuff. How how does a child with no frame of reference begin to create a frame of reference in which the adult then has to deal with?
Yes. And so for this, I want to mention Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's a cell biologist, and he is considered an authority in the world of epigenetics. And so all of his work surrounds consciousness, the subconscious mind. And so he talks about how when we are in when the mother is in the last trimester, how that's when the brain is beginning to kind of formulate. So between that period and the year of 7 years of age, that's when a child is kind of the brain is in this theta state. And he says this is the state in which the child is kind of like in a hypnosis state. So this is when they're just kind of receiving information. They don't really have consciousness yet, but they're just downloading information. And the information they're downloading is based on what they're observing. So they're seeing how mom and dad interact. They're seeing how grandma and grandpa interact and aunties. And so they're seeing the family dynamics. So they're observing this and watching this, and they're downloading all of these different behaviors.
So this is when they're creating a frame of reference.
Exactly. This is when they're creating their frame of reference. So you have that part, that family dynamic, and then you have the community dynamic. And so all of this goes into how the child is going to, how he or she believes that they are going to show up in the world. That starts to create their character, their likes and dislikes based on what they are seeing around them. And I also like to bring up the book, The Four Agreements. And this is a book that has been truly helpful to me on my journey by Don Miguel Ruiz. And he talks about the domestication process and how we as children begin to learn what to do and what not to do because we want that approval from our parents. So when you put all this together, it starts to shape and put everything in context as to how we begin to learn to show up in the world as children. And that stays with us into adulthood. And then your other question was regarding adults. And
right. So that was a beautiful way of addressing how children create a frame of reference. And even though, and the wonderful thing that I want to kind of point out about how you express that is that the frame of reference is not wrong.
No.
It's not incorrect. And we're going to get into why keeping that frame of reference makes it seem incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is like when you create a frame of reference, what you're doing as a child is needing to be safe. And you're
Yes.
needing to be part of the community. You're needing to be part of all of this. But now here you are as an adult, and that frame of reference is the foundation of your life as an adult. Now, I would love for you to talk about like not only the importance of putting this in question, but how can we start recognizing it? Where is it?
So I will share with you a little bit of my journey, and I think that will help the listeners kind of see for themselves when they're doing their own reflection and finding out, is this related to my childhood trauma, and how do I begin to change my outlook? So I had in my journey, this was over 7 years ago, I hit a rock bottom place in my life yet again. But this time I was like, I got to get out of it. I can't keep on this same cycle of repetitive situation where I feel like I'm building back again. Like that is exhausting. It takes up so much energy. But at this point I was living in upstate New York. I had a job. I was working in government. It was a very stressful job, required a lot of time, energy. For the most part, I enjoyed what I did, but it was just the mental part of it that sometimes would be a lot for me. And so because of that, I had developed some anxiety at certain times. My anxiety would get really bad. And in order to cope with that, especially at night, it was hard for me to fall asleep. So I would go to the store, have my bottle of wine to help ease my nerves, to help me fall asleep. And that started to be, I'm sorry?
A whole bottle of wine?
Depending on how bad it was.
Whoa, all right.
and I would sleep. Right. So I started doing it.
That'll do.
Right. That'll do it. So, and that started to become a pattern. Right. So I recognized like, well, that's not good, but I need to sleep. And I was not making time to reflect as to, Kaii, this is not a good behavior to have. Right. I just was like, I need to sleep so I can then function the next day.
Yeah.
So that continued to happen. I had got out of a relationship that was like off and on. So that was also draining. And so I just kind of found myself by myself, like, what have I become? Like, what is this? And so from that point, I had someone come into my life, and a friend of mine, and he's like, Kaii, you need to get this together. Like you do. And at that point, it was like everything that I had kind of shoved under the rug, that I put in a corner and hid so nobody else could see it, so I couldn't see it. All of that started to begin to surface. And I had to deal with all of this stuff that I had hid. And as long as I thought that I could put on a happy face, I could put on a front that everything was okay in my life because I have this job, I look like I'm important. So all is well.
Right.
And so I remember he had came over to my house, and I was eating my ice cream and crying my eyes out. And he's like, you can do this. You can pull it together. And so I was like, I don't even know how to pull what together. Just a mess. And he's like, you are in all of these areas that you're finding difficulty. You are the common denominator. So that means that you can impact change in all those areas. And that was the first time that I felt like, whoa, I have control. I actually have control. So that means I can change some of these outcomes. Because at first I thought it was everybody else. Everybody else was doing everything to me. So therefore, I was unable to control my life.
And I want to just interject really quick. And the control that you had is how you are going to act and react, not in what is happening to you. Right, exactly. And so I went into the bathroom after he left. I went into my bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror, and it was the first time I really looked at myself in the mirror. Right. Bloodshot eyes. And I was like, I don't even love the person looking back at me. I don't, but I never admitted it. I felt that. Well, you don't want to admit that shit.
No, I love me, Yeah. But I looked in the mirror, I was like, I don't love her at all. Yeah. I don't like her.
That's right.
And so I looked at myself and I said, I'm going to learn how to love you. I'm going to learn because I don't know. And so that started me on a path of saying, so what do I do next? Because I have no clue what I'm doing. And so I knew that I had to change my mind. I knew that part. And so I started the affirmations. Now when we say affirmations, some people think it's like, oh, I am wonderful. I was really saying this every single day because like my life depended upon me reprogramming.
You got to start somewhere.
You're right. You got to start somewhere. So I started with that. And so that's what I kept doing. And it was a roller coaster of a ride, but I kept going in that direction. But the part that really was transformative is when I went home to Syracuse. So this was probably about 5 years into this cycle. I like saying cycles of healing. And I went with my fiance. So we're there, and my father he's an amazing man. And I've never met a man like him in my life. And he likes things a certain way. So I was tasked with, in my childhood, with figuring out what way that he liked that worked, right? So I had picked up, we went to a restaurant, and he didn't like the restaurant. He's like, I don't like that, you got to go to a different restaurant. So we're going all these different restaurants. Now, mind you, this is like around the holidays. So I had booked this restaurant several months prior, so that we would be able to have our reservations and we would have seating. So he did not want to go there. So we went he's like, well, why don't we go here? So we're driving around on Thanksgiving trying to find a place that's open. And so I thought nothing of this. I was just like, I got to find the restaurant, even though I was getting frustrated. So we finally found a restaurant that was actually in the hotel we were staying at. And He ordered the food. He didn't like the food. This is overpriced. It's not good.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, I'm mentally I was just like, I just came here to visit. We have chased restaurants trying to find one, And so when my fiance and I returned, he said, Kai, I would like to talk to you for a second here. And he said, we drove up here 5 hours on the road to come spend time with your family. We said, we're taking your mom and your dad out to eat. We're paying for everything. You booked everything in advance. You told everyone in advance where we were going to eat. And last minute, you're moving things around. He said, you need to see that's not right. And it seems like you're trying to chase some type of validation. And so for me, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I just had to find a restaurant for my father that he liked. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even see what he was saying. And he said, no, look at all what you did. And look, was anything appreciated? And this is not knocking my father, because again, parents have their own set of traumas. So that's a whole nother, I guess, topic.
No,
so it's not knocking him.
This isn't even a conversation about your father.
Yeah. So I was like, wow. He's like, so he said it a few times so I could get it, because I was so used to this. This was normal. Like this was a normal thing I was doing. So
I get it. Yeah.
So I began to look at that and say, whoa, so I realize what I'm doing. Why am I doing that? Why? When somebody brought it to my attention and I acknowledged it, then I said, well, why is this happening? Why am I doing this? And so that why started, as I started to question what I was doing, then that started to bring me back into my childhood. Mm-hmm. And say, well, when did I first start doing this? When did I learn how to do this? And then I started to just reflect. And when we say reflect, sometimes you just need time away from other people. So people aren't feeding you information, but that you can go within yourself to figure out your why without someone telling you your why. And so I realized also in the workplace how I was the person that I'd come in the earliest, I'll stay the latest, I'll work weekends, I'll have vacation coming up and the boss says, oh, I need this project done, but you're on vacation. I'd be the one that said, oh, I'll cancel my vacation. Do you need me to come in? Chasing, seeking that validation. And I started to see that pattern throughout all of my relationships. But the root of that learned behavior started in childhood.
Right.
So once I began to realize that and acknowledge it, I said, okay, so why am I chasing my parents? Why am I chasing friendships? Why am I chasing my boss and other people within my circle? So what do I feel about myself? What was I taught about myself? Because I need to then begin.
Yeah, that's it's not about what you were taught about yourself. I always like to kind of lean on the word learn, what you learned, because I was taught all sorts of things that I never learned. And so it's not important what we were taught, because what we were taught, it's still a perception that we have. We have a perception of what we were taught. Right. What we learned, and I always like to say, what you say and what I hear actually have nothing to do with one another. Mm-hmm. What you say has everything to do with what you feel like you need to say. What I hear is what I need to hear. So as a child, we learn all sorts of kind of crazy stuff. We learn because we have no frame of reference. So you had no frame of reference about your childhood. And so like the relationship with your father, and your father probably being the head of household, you're trying to, and were you firstborn? Did we
only
talk
child.
About that? You're an only child. So so the whole idea is like, you have to, like, you're going to want to be that. You're going to want to be the head of household. You're going to want to, like, why would you want to be the second in charge, right? Why so pleasing your dad was, of course, the thing that you worked towards. And then that became your boss, and that became like your best friends, your partners, which is why maybe you're in relationships that aren't healthy and all of these things, and it's really difficult to connect those two things. But if we can start from a position of everything that you experience is connected to your childhood until you teach yourself a new frame of reference. So, talk to me about like cyclical learning and how like one cycle leads into another cycle.
Yes, as you continue to grow and evolve, you'll find different parts of yourself that need some tending to. So if anyone says, I am completely healed, I am resolved of all my traumas,
That's
I
just
don't know
opening
about
the
that.
door for new traumas to show themselves.
Exactly.
Because even for me in my cycles, like I have noticed that as soon as I say, wow, my body doesn't feel any pain, I am feeling so good and everything's working out, within a day, I go, uh oh. Like, that means some shit's about to fucking go down. And so yeah, so can you talk to me about how cyclical learning is something that just keeps coming?
It does. And, as I said, as we continue to evolve and grow, we're going to learn different parts of ourselves. We're going to learn different parts of the world around us. So, say, for example, if you have gone through this healing process of healing from traumas from your childhood or adolescence in your 20s, let's say you're in your 30s now, it's like, I've done a lot of healing work, right? So I'm good. And say you get into a relationship, right? So before that relationship starts, you could think, I am at peace, I am confident in myself, I know where I'm going. And you enter into a relationship and all these insecurities start popping up.
Right.
And then you're like, wait a second, I have trust issues. Wait a second, I have all the things that you've thought that you've dealt with. And so instead of us putting pressure on ourselves, like, why do I feel this way? I should be over this. I've done the work. This is a new cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that we now have to learn in this new cycle of relationships? Maybe we're in the cycle of we're learning how to let people back in. Because maybe during that healing process, we kind of close ourselves off a little bit and said, I just need to go inward. I just need some time to myself so I can focus on me. Because a lot of times too, depending on that personality type, we can allow other people to pour so much of their other thoughts, ideas, their perceptions, and their experiences in our cup that we can't even decipher what is somebody else's belief versus what we really believe. And so let's say you're going through that initial cycle of healing, you're like, I just need some time to myself to figure out what I want, who I am, because everyone else has told me who I am, what I should be.
Mm-hmm.
So now if you're in that space of now letting somebody back in, and it doesn't have to be romantic, it could be friendships, maybe some of your old friendships that you've had, that for your own mental, emotional, spiritual health, you're like, I don't think I can hang out with those folks anymore. I love you from a distance,
Mm-hmm.
but this cycle that I'm on right now, I can't continue those type of behaviors that I was engaged in when I was, when we had a closer friendship with the people that unfortunately you have to kind of love from afar. And so say you're coming into meeting new people, this could maybe trigger some emotions of, can I let them in? What if they don't like me? And so say you get past that, and then there's a whole nother layer of maybe there's something they know you now, right? So they know the healthy you, they know the you that now has more kind of self-awareness. But what if they start to learn about the person that you were before going on this new cycle? Will they still like me? Will they start to judge me? Will this change the dynamics of the relationship? So we are always on this continuous cycle of evolving, and we are going to have experiences that may start to rattle, to trigger some of our traumas that we thought that we had gotten rid of.
Right.
And saying, I am over it, it no longer impacts me, and someone can come in your life and stir up all of that you thought that you dealt with. So the important thing is, yes, I love that you said cycles. That's how I look at life itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way we can say, okay, I see this is how I'm feeling. Let's pause for a moment. Where is this coming from? right? So now we've learned, so now we're at this space that we can pause and say, okay, I've learned now that instead of just reacting and saying, well, this is just the way I am, let me just pause for a moment and figure out where this is coming from. This is a wound that I need to tend to. So this is all about extending grace to we will extend grace to other people so fast. But for us, it's like, no, pull it together, get it together. We have to begin to learn to show ourselves that compassion that we would for somebody else. And it is a learning process to show ourselves that compassion and understand that it's okay if we start to feel those emotions ball up. We just have to know, what do we do with them? And how can we manage them? How can we begin to heal? And of course, doing all of this in a healthy manner.
Yeah, and all of this really revolves, I don't know how other cultures work. I'm born and raised in the United States. So this seems to be part of a big consumer sort of thing where it's like we're always trying to market ourselves or put ourselves out there in a way that is, oh, I'm healthy, oh, I'm strong, and oh, I'm exactly what you want in a human being, and when I see somebody that makes me feel uncomfortable, I can make fun of them so I can put myself in a higher position and do all these things, and all of that is unhealthy, and all of that is reactionary to feeling something that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Agreed. And what we see with social media, it has tapped into something in us where, you have some people, not everyone, but are posting certain images of themselves to create this type of reality that they want other people to believe. So it's about me putting out this perception that either maybe I am financially, I am doing well, and that could mean that I'm renting a vehicle from a rental car shop to take some photos to post it on social media so other people can think that I have this brand new car. So what social media has done, it has created a platform that has allowed us to kind of feed into, or it taps into those insecurities that some of us may have. And we can kind of put it out there.
We are the United States. That is the strongest insecurity we have, is to not fit in, right? Like, if we go back to like the 50s, the ideal was the football player and the cheerleader, white and like blonde and all of this kind of stuff, and that's really that's still in the undercurrent of everything that's going on. Right now, there's a lot going on in the world, and a lot of it has to do with the inability to look at oneself and think that your idea of who you are is wrong. And if we could admit, if everybody can go out and admit that, like, hey, I learned some things as a child that probably weren't right, we would offer more dignified care. We would offer more help and more support and more appreciation for our neighbor than we currently do. And so I think it is, when we talk about this, we really look at the idea that the entire world, that everyone who runs the world today is just a child. Like, and we all are, until we do this work. This work is the work of true maturation, right? Of true becoming a mature human being. Can you talk about how adults are just children, and where we can see that, and how we can maybe at least want to take a more mature step?
Yes. Just what we were talking about with social media, through that we can see how adults are using, we always talk about how children are using social media, but how are adults using social media? Are they using it to portray that their lifestyle is a certain way? And why is it why is that necessary? So you're trying to prove to strangers that you kind of have it all, when maybe inside you feel like my life is a mess. So where is that coming from, that I have to put on this front that not only is everything well, I'm doing better than the people that are looking at my Instagram or my Facebook.
Right.
So all of that is coming from some place. Now, in the workplace, that could mean maybe the person that comes to work and they're, dressed from head to toe, always impeccable. And I'm not knocking that. If that's your style, that's your style.
No.
But if there's balance to everything. And so if there's that type of person, then it's, the need to be maybe the center of attention, the need to always be the best dress, the best of everything. Or maybe you have the person that likes to be in the background, doesn't like to be in the front. And you can see all these different personality types in the workplace, right? There's the person that talks in every single meeting. And then there's a person that won't say anything, right? And so all of that is coming from somewhere. So the person that needs to be seen, could that be a person that when in childhood, no one ever listened to them? And now that they found their voice, you're going to hear what I have to say, right? That
or
person,
like, and this could be the complete opposite as well. Someone who needs to speak all the time, maybe someone who was real popular in grade school and all the teachers loved them and they were able to just speak and speak and speak and never corrected because they were like the cute little kid and everyone liked them. But now they're in a position where maybe they need to listen more, but they haven't learned that listening gets them anywhere.
So true. And you have some adults, and I'm sure people will relate to this. You have some adults that you can't have a conversation with them. Everything turns into an argument, right? We can't just have.
Who as an adult wants an argument?
Exactly.
Like I don't know the last time I've been in an argument. Like once I start to feel uneasy, I either remove myself from the situation or I present it. I say, hey, look, I'm feeling a little triggered, and this is going to have to, this doesn't have anything to do with you and what you're saying. I just need to be able to reestablish. I don't understand, like as an adult, why would you ever yell? Like maybe if you have children, but that's really being triggered and that's being pushed to your limit because you have decided that you haven't figured out how to balance your life. Adults taking care of the elderly, like this is another population where people, like if you get triggered, you can seriously abuse the people on the other end.
It's so true. And when you say that, it reminds me, I've done several trainings regarding the older adult population and the importance of holistic care being integrated into their care plan or treatment plan. And what we see a lot of times, we have those conversations about the older adult population and nursing facilities, and no one comes and visits them, which is sad. When you look at that, that is, of course, sad and disturbing. And then you're like, well, I don't understand why their daughter or son doesn't come and visit them. But we don't know what that daughter and son, what their experience was. And I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying we have to begin to look deeper, because if there are certain traumas that son or daughter experienced in childhood, this may be their way of saying, listen, you didn't show up for me when I needed you. I'm not showing up for you.
Yeah.
And so, again, not saying right or wrong, but it's to begin to look at, so how do we begin to heal that wound? And it's very challenging if you are an adult and you are in a position where you have to now become a caregiver for maybe your mom or dad, and maybe growing up it was maybe abusive, or you just didn't get what you needed in a loving environment. It can be very challenging for you to then show love to that, because you remember that experience growing up. You remember how maybe being emotionally neglected, or maybe some type of physical abuse or something like that. And so now to kind of push all of that aside to then show up and take care of this individual can be a hard thing to do. And so it's so important that we as adults begin to recognize that certain outcomes that we are experiencing in adulthood, relationships that we have, our behaviors, all of that being tied back to our childhood, it's important to remember that, okay, though this is how I am right now, this is my behavior. Maybe I'm a tyrant, or maybe I'm a person that kind of sits back, doesn't like to be in the forefront, but knowing that I can begin to make changes to these outcomes, to my behaviors as I begin to go on my healing path.
That's a big deal, all of this stuff. Let me think. I did have a thing that was going to wrap back around, but I lost it. So,
well, I'll ask you this, and you can let me know if this fits in or not.
Yeah.
Because as we begin to, I'll talk a lot about setting up healthy boundaries, and how when you begin to do that for yourself, it's like, listen, like you said, I gotta love you from afar, or I was the person that people could call me last minute, and I would drop everything and rearrange my schedule to do something with them. Then I said, I'm not doing it anymore.
Right.
You gotta let me. So that, because if I keep doing that, that will change. Now they're like, well, wait a second, what is Kaii? So why isn't she
coming when I say come? She can come.
Exactly.
What's up? Like all of a sudden, like the transactional aspect. Yes, if you have transactional relationships, those are going to end because you're no longer for sale.
Right. And so just to be aware of that, but this is off. But while this is changing, you are healing. And you're beginning to really love yourself, care about yourself, value yourself, and there's not a price on that. Like no external relationship is worth that. So I just wanted to say, because sometimes for some people it could be discouraging if it's like, wow,
I'm going to lose all of my shallow relationships are going to go away. Yeah.
Right. And now I'm alone. And
I don't know.
Yeah, but keep trucking, because there
are better people out there.
Yeah. There are people out there that are that want to see you in the best version of yourself, right? And so if you're around people that are not really supporting that, then are they really your friends?
Right. And do they love you? Or do they love what you can do for them?
Exactly.
Because if they can love what you do for them, that's great, but you are not required to do that for them. If you want to, that's fine. If you want to and then come back and say, well, I did this for you, now you need to do this for me, you gotta you're being a child. That's fucked up. Kaii, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. It was my honor.
Yeah, wonderful.
My honor.
While editing this episode, it dawned on me that although we can see a child clumsily attempt to navigate space, like grabbing for something or maneuvering something into their mouth, it is good to remember that they are also learning relationships and emotions in that same clumsy way. The way they learn how to move, we can monitor, but everything else is invisible to us, as it was when we were learning. I encourage you to look back and see where you may have incorrectly defined your surroundings, and how, now that you have a healthier frame of reference, you might attempt to reimagine some of those perceptions. I want to thank Kaii for all that she shared, and I encourage you to learn more with the links provided in the description of this episode. Please rate and review this podcast and or leave comments for this episode to help me better create helpful content for you. Support this show at anchor.fm or support me and my work at Patreon, where you will get access to unedited content as well as writings and access to supporter group portrait sessions with me. I host workshops regularly, which are open to the public and are a source of continuing education units for professionals. I also take a limited number of one-on-one clients every month, so contact me through martinjohn.com when you're ready to work together. I accept financial support through Venmo at martinjohn_Garcia, so if you benefit from listening to this content, please consider supporting my efforts. Thank you for listening to the Recover Yourself podcast, and until next time, keep recovering yourself.